Do you hear it? The distant echo of children's laughter, their tiny hands gripping one another, spinning in joyful circles as they chant that nursery rhyme, Ring Around the Rosie, a pocket full of posies. It sounds harmless enough, doesn't it? Just a playful game, passed down through generations like so many others. But beneath the innocent rhythm, beneath the melody, lies a dark and ancient truth, a truth hidden in the shadows of history. The plague. A relentless force of death and suffering that once claimed the lives of millions. And this children's rhyme? A grim memorial to its cold, unrelenting grip. This is the twisted story behind Ring Around the Rosie, a rhyme that you thought you knew. What if I told you that this innocent-sounding jingle was a dance with death? A hidden reflection of a society ravaged by pestilence, a reminder etched into the very bones of time itself. But hold on. What if there's even more? What if the truth goes deeper than you can imagine? The very rhyme you sing with your children, the one you remember from your own youth, what if it was never meant for children at all? Ring around the Rosie, a pocket full of posies, a tis-hoo. We all fall down. You know it, don't you? The rhyme that dances through playgrounds, carried on the lips of children for generations. Perhaps you recited it as a child yourself, spinning in circles, laughing, arms outstretched, feet skipping on the ground. It's a simple thing, really. A fleeting, charming moment, a ritual passed from one generation to the next. Everyone knows it. But have you ever wondered where it came from? What it truly means? In its simplicity, it seems harmless enough, a childish tune with no deeper thought behind it. Yet it's impossible to ignore the cold irony when you know its origins. For while children may laugh and sing, the rhyme was born from one of the darkest times in human history. The rhyme itself is thought to have originated during the terrifying age of the bubonic plague in the 14th century, when death swept across Europe like a wave. Ring around the Rosie, the rose, a symbol of the rush or boils that marked the victims of the plague, their skin blackened and bloated. A pocket full of posies, these sweet flowers were carried to ward off the stench of death that filled the streets, or so it was believed. Then there rests the line that still sends chills down the spine of anyone who knows the truth, a tis-hoo. A tis-hoo. The sneezing sound, a reference to the violent fits of sickness that often preceded death. It's a sickness that, for many, meant their lives would end in agonizing isolation, alone in the suffocating embrace of a disease that no one could understand, and even fewer could survive. And then, inevitably, we all fall down, the finality. The inevitable end. Everyone falls. The circle is broken. The dance is over. This nursery rhyme was not created in the innocence of childhood, it was a grim reflection of the world's descent into despair. It was born from the horror of a world facing a disease that had no cure, no mercy, and no escape. It was a way to make sense of the chaos, the terror, the death that surrounded them. But that's just the surface, the familiar version. And yet, if you look closer, you will see something far more disturbing. What if I told you that the story of Ring Around the Rosie goes much deeper? What if the rhyme had roots that reached back much further than the plague? What if the song, in its simplicity, was something far more ancient, something tied not just to disease but to something far darker, and far older than even history can explain? Let's peel back the layers of this seemingly innocent rhyme. The Ring Around the Rosie we know today has travelled through time, evolving in form, but its roots run deep, entwined in the very soil of human suffering. It's a rhyme that, when you look at its history, feels like a whisper from a long-forgotten past. The earliest documented references to Ring Around the Rosie come from the mid-19th century, but the rhyme itself is believed to have much older origins, much darker ones. Some of the earliest written versions appear in collections of English folklore and nursery rhymes, where it takes on a slightly different form. In these versions, the rhyme is more explicit in its reference to death and disease. The line "Ring Around the Rosie" is often interpreted as referring to the red, puffy rash that marks the onset of the bubonic plague. A rosy isn't just a flower in this context, it's a metaphor for the telltale sign of the plague. The rose was a symbol of decay, its beauty now twisted into a grotesque reminder of what the disease did to the human body. The boils, which would appear on the skin of the victim, would burst and emit foul-smelling fluids, much like the decaying petals of a flower. A pocket full of posies is the next line, and this too has its own grim history. Posies, or small bouquets of flowers, were carried by people during the plague to mask the overpowering stench of death and decay that hung over the cities. The smell of rotting bodies in the streets was so overwhelming that people thought flowers could protect them from the miasma or bad air, which was believed to be the source of the disease. This desperate superstition was, of course, misguided, but it was all they had to hold on to in a world that was rapidly crumbling around them. Then comes the chilling line, "A tissue." A tissue, the sneeze, an unmistakable sign of infection. If you'd ever seen someone in the throes of the plague, you'd know that the plague often started with fever and chills, followed by coughing, sneezing, and eventually the eruption of those painful buboes. To sneeze was a signal that the disease had entered your body and that your time was running out. It was, in its own way, a death knell, a warning that you were marked. And finally, we all fall down, the fate of the infected, the inevitable end. Those who fell ill were often left to die alone, cast aside by a society that could no longer bear the weight of its own grief. This was no longer a nursery rhyme, it was an unspoken truth that children grew up with, a ritualistic chant passed down in whispers, a message of death disguised as something innocent. But here's where things get stranger, darker. While this popular interpretation is rooted in the devastating impact of the Black Death, it's not the whole story. The earliest recorded versions of the rhyme date back to at least 1790, long before the more recognizable forms of it began circulating in the wake of the plague. In fact, some folklorists believe the rhyme might predate even the Black Death, suggesting that its origins go back much further, perhaps even to the time of earlier plague outbreaks or other deadly events in human history. And that's where things get chilling. Some versions of the rhyme, even those from centuries before the plague, reference elements that could suggest a deeper, older connection to rites of passage, death, and even rituals that predate recorded history. There are even whispers of ancient festivals rituals, performed long before the plague reached Europe, where people would dance in circles, wearing masks, chanting songs of death to ward off evil spirits. These rituals, designed to protect the living from unseen forces, have echoes in the rhyme we know today. Could it be that Ring Around the Rosie wasn't just a reflection of a disease, but something more, a symbol of cyclical death? Of seasons of rituals that stretch back to forgotten times when humanity itself had to grapple with mortality on a more primal level. The more you look, the more questions arise. There is an unsettling sense that Ring Around the Rosie is not just a relic of the past, but an ancient echo, reaching out from the forgotten corners of human history, urging us to remember what it means to face the inevitability of death, to stare into the face of the unknown. What if this rhyme, in all its innocence, is not just a warning about disease but about the eternal, unending cycle of death that awaits us all? Now that we've unearthed some of the more grisly details of this rhyme, it's time to ask ourselves, what does it all mean? Beyond its references to disease, what ancient, archetypal, and metaphysical layers lie buried beneath the words? Why has this rhyme, in all its simplicity, endured for centuries, whispering its dark secrets to generation after generation? Let's start with the symbols: the Rosie, the posies, the sneeze, and the falling down. Each one carries an ancient weight. The Rosie, or rose, represents more than a mere flower. It's an image of beauty and decay, a symbol that is at once innocent and grotesque. In many mythologies, roses represent the duality of life and death, the blooming of new life, and the inevitable wilting that follows. In Greek mythology, for instance, the rose was sacred to Aphrodite, the goddess of love, but it was also intertwined with the god of death, Hades, representing the fragility of life and the certainty of death. The rose, in its very form, exists at the intersection of love and loss. It is both a gift and a curse. The pocketful of posies is another key symbol. These posies were meant to ward off the miasma, the bad air that people once believed caused disease. Yet, as we know now, the miasma was a misinterpretation of the true nature of the plague, bacteria carried by fleas on rats. The posies, with their sweet, deceiving fragrance, served as a false comfort, a desperate act of control in the face of a death that was beyond comprehension. The flowers were a symbol of a society grasping at straws, trying to hold back the inevitable with what little they had. The posies were, in a sense, an attempt to mask the rot, the festering fear that had already set in. Then there's the tishu. A tishu, the sneeze. It is at once a symbol of vulnerability and a harbinger of death. To sneeze is to expel something from your body, but also to release something contagious into the air. It's a simple act, yet in the context of the plague, it becomes a moment of great significance, a moment that separates the living from the dying. The sneeze is an involuntary sign, a signal that marks the transition from health to sickness, from life to death. It's a liminal moment, one where the boundary between the world of the living and the realm of the dead becomes blurred. And finally, the most striking line of all, we all fall down. This is the heart of the rhyme. This is where the ancient meaning of the nursery rhyme surfaces. The phrase speaks to the inevitability of death, the unbroken circle of mortality that we, as humans, must all eventually enter. We all fall down is not merely a statement about the plague, it is a statement about the nature of life itself. In this line, we are reminded of the cosmic truth no one escapes. It is both a somber observation and a universal truth. The circle of life is broken, the dance is finished, and the inevitable conclusion comes for everyone. But it's not just a statement about physical death. The line hints at something deeper. It speaks to the collapse of the self, the fall of empires, the disintegration of entire ways of life. The rhyme, in its stark simplicity, carries with it the knowledge that everything, no matter how strong, will eventually fall. The falling down could be seen as the collapse of order itself, the breakdown of the structures that hold society together. It's a reminder that even the most sophisticated civilizations, like the one that was brought to its knees by the plague, will one day crumble into dust. But why does this rhyme endure? Why do children, year after year, continue to dance in circles and chant these words, unaware of their ancient, darker meaning? Perhaps there's something in the rhythm of it, something in the cyclical nature of the rhyme, that speaks to a deeper part of the human soul. It's a kind of ritual, a way of coming to terms with the inevitability of death, of acknowledging the darkness without fully confronting it. It is, perhaps, humanity's attempt to tame death through play, through laughter, through song, through movement. The dance of life and death, in a way, becomes a comforting illusion. And yet, there's something unsettling about it. The more you look at the rhyme, the more it feels like a warning, like a ritual performed not just to entertain children, but to prepare them. What are we really teaching them when we sing Ring Around the Rosie? What kind of symbolic inheritance are we passing down, unwittingly, when we ask the young to dance in circles around the grim spectre of mortality? This rhyme, while playful on the surface, is a haunting reminder of the fragility of life. Its origins are not just tied to the Black Death, but to something much older, an understanding of life and death that transcends time. A shared human memory that speaks to the darkest parts of our collective psyche. To truly grasp the magnitude of Ring Around the Rosie, we must step back, far beyond the bounds of plague and pestilence. To understand its true origins, we must trace the deep roots of this rhyme, roots that stretch back into the murky depths of ancient civilization. As we journey further, we'll find that this seemingly simple nursery rhyme has an unbroken connection to the rituals, fears, and mysteries of deep time, a time long before the rise of the Black Death. A time when humans first began to grapple with the fragility of existence. And this journey, once embarked upon, reveals that Ring Around the Rosie may not be about the plague at all, at least, not in the way we think. Instead, it may be a reflection of a much older pattern, one that echoes through the ages. The concept of cyclical death, rebirth, and the fragility of life is as old as humanity itself. This idea was embedded in the earliest mythologies of ancient cultures, the Egyptians, the Sumerians, the Greeks. They all had their own ways of dealing with death, the mystery that lingers at the edges of life, and these cultures performed rituals to honor, appease, and even combat death. In ancient Egypt, for example, the symbol of the lotus flower was intimately tied to the cycle of life and death. The lotus blooms each morning and closes with the setting sun, an eternal cycle that mirrors the human experience. The Egyptians believed in the afterlife, where one's soul would be weighed by Anubis, the god of mummification, and if found worthy, the soul would move on to a new life. The flower, like the rose, symbolized the fragility and cyclical nature of existence, life emerging from death and then returning again to dust. But it's not just the Egyptians. In Sumerian myth, the cycle of life and death was represented by the goddess Inanna, who descends into the underworld, only to be reborn once again. Her journey is one of transformation and resurrection, a symbolic death and rebirth that was enacted in ancient rituals across the Mesopotamian world. The concept of life's cyclical nature, the rising and falling, the blooming and dying, is threaded through the mythologies of every ancient civilization. And then, in the far north, the Norse had their own understanding of death's inevitability. The great cyclical destruction of the world Ragnarok was an inevitable event, one that would end the current age, and from that, a new world would be born. The Norse mythos is filled with cycles, the seasons, the stars, the sun's rise and fall, the eventual destruction of all things, and the rebirth of the world from the ashes of what once was. These ideas of death, rebirth, and cyclical destruction carried weight through the ages. They formed the backbone of the rites of passage that guided human beings through the uncertainty of life. They were seen in the burial practices, in the rituals, and in the stories passed down by firelight. It is here, within these very rituals, that we find echoes of Ring Around the Rosie. The act of dancing in a circle, spinning round and round, only to collapse into the inevitable fall, is not a new concept. It is an ancient ritualistic act. Ancient cultures would often engage in circle dances, performing them during rites of passage, harvest celebrations, and even during funeral rituals. In these dances, participants would circle the fire or circle around the tombs of ancestors, acknowledging their connection to the earth and to the cycle of life and death. For the ancient peoples, the circle represented unity, completeness, and the eternal cycle. The circle, like the wheel of the year, symbolizes the inevitable return of death and life. To dance in a circle, to move with the rhythm of the seasons, was to acknowledge that life is not linear but cyclical, always returning, always repeating. So, could it be that Ring Around the Rosie is an echo of these very ancient rituals? Could this nursery rhyme be a distilled, sanitized version of something far older, something we do not even realize we still perform? Perhaps, like so many ancient traditions, it has been reduced over time to a harmless game, its deeper meanings hidden beneath layers of history and innocence. It is here, in this deep time, that the true origin of the rhyme begins to surface. The circle, the fall, the dance, all of these are deeply ingrained in humanity's earliest understanding of death. Perhaps it's not just a song about the plague. Perhaps it's a ritual, a remembrance of something we all share, our connection to the cycle of life, death, and rebirth that transcends all human history. A memory encoded deep within our collective consciousness, one we've passed down, almost unknowingly, from the dawn of civilization. The fall down is no longer just about the end of a plague victim's life. It is about the fall of all things, societies, individuals, even the cosmos itself. We are all bound to fall, eventually. It is a universal truth that, like the seasons, repeats itself endlessly. The rhyme becomes, in this context, a song of both warning and comfort, a reminder of our inevitable fate, yes, but also a celebration of our part in the eternal dance. And so, we return to the circle. The same one children dance around, eyes wide with innocence, voices lifted in song. Ring Around the Rosie, a simple, seemingly harmless rhyme. But now, after our journey through the murky depths of history, death, and cosmic cycles, we see it for what it truly is. It is a memorial, a ritual, a dark thread woven into the fabric of our collective consciousness. What was once a playful tune, a harmless distraction, is now a chilling reminder of something much older. We all fall down. It's not just a line marking the end of a game. It is the truth of our shared existence, the fall that comes for everyone, the inevitable descent into the unknown. This rhyme, passed down through the ages, is not just a relic of the plague. It is a ritual as old as time itself, connecting us to the ancient rites of death, to the beliefs of civilizations long gone. A song of both life and death, of joy and sorrow, intertwined in a dance that will never cease. And yet, there is comfort here too. For in the fall, there is rebirth. In the inevitable end, there is the beginning of something else. This rhyme is a reminder that life is cyclical, that death is not the end, but merely a part of a much larger journey, a journey we've been on for millennia, with no end in sight. Perhaps, in the end, the circle is not meant to be feared, but embraced. Now, the next time you hear a child sing Ring Around the Rosie, don't be quick to dismiss it. Know that you're hearing the echo of an ancient story, one of life and death, of beauty and decay, of beginnings and endings. It's a song that holds within it the weight of centuries. A song that teaches us that we, too, are part of something much larger, a rhythm we dance to. Whether we realize it or not, but perhaps we should ask ourselves, as we spin and fall, is it the fall we fear, or is it the dance itself? And as we leave the circle behind, there is one final thought to leave you with, a question that will linger long after the rhyme fades from your mind. What else has been hidden in the words we sing without thought? What other ancient truths, masked beneath the veil of innocence, might be waiting, just beneath the surface, for us to uncover? Until next time, when we once again unravel the forgotten meanings of the stories we've been telling ourselves for centuries.